Lesson 5. Did Jesus know he was God when he was a boy? It's an interesting question, and there are all kinds of fables about Jesus' childhood. One is a funny story about him playing with other children, and they were making clay animals out of a mud puddle that they were playing in. And everyone was bragging about how good theirs was, so he just made a dove and threw it up in the air, clapped his hands, and the dove flew away. So those are interesting fables. But the question that I have as a historian is, why is Luke the only one to tell us about a puberty story of Jesus when we're all interested in his boyhood? What was he like? What was his relationship to his siblings, to his parents? The reason is Luke told this story because he's Greek and not Jewish. The Greeks and Romans made an assumption that the Jews did not necessarily make, and that is that if you're a king, you're born as a king. If you're a warrior, you're born as a warrior, and you will begin to see manifestations of the adult person in puberty as the child becomes a man. So, the question about every hero of Greco-Roman literature is this: is the boy like the man? Is the boy like the man? So, for example, Alexander the Great, he's the Greco-Roman hero, right? When he was 12 years old, or about that age, his father brought some wild horses in, and they're going to tame the horses for battle. One particular big black stallion no one could tame. And Alexander the Great asked his father, the king, can I try to tame the horse? Well, his father didn't really like Alexander the Great. He was kind of a mama's boy. And he said, sure, thinking it would be funny to watch him fail. And Alexander the Great took the bridle of the horse, and he stared the horse down until the horse became mesmerized. And in one fell swoop, he jumped up on the horse, landed on his back. The horse bucked up. He stayed on. And that became the horse, according to tradition, that Alexander the Great rode in all of his conquests. Is the boy like the man? Well, he was a conqueror. He conquered the horse. So yes, the boy is like the man. You can find similar stories to Cyrus the Great. That was actually my favorite. Wish we had time. Or Caesar Augustus, Julius Caesar. All of the great leaders had a puberty story in their biography to answer the question, was the boy like the man? So that's what we're doing here. And Luke chooses a time when a boy would enter the temple for the very first time. And Mary and Joseph, year after year, went to the Passover celebration. And this particular Passover, they leave midway through the Passover, which most people did. The celebrations are over. After that is teaching for the rabbis and their students. Jesus kind of hangs out for that, which is kind of cool. Mary and Joseph leave without Jesus. How irresponsible. No. See, when they come to Passover, Jesus is a boy. He would travel with the women. When they leave from the Passover, he's a man, because he's been in the temple. He would travel with the men. Joseph assumed he was still with the women, because he always had been. Mary assumed he was with the men, because he's now been to Passover. So they travel for a full day out, and they camp for the night. They reunite, men and women. They travel separately, but at night they'd sleep together. And there's no Jesus. They're frantic. They can't leave, so they go back the next day. They're a full day out, full day back. On the third day, we pick it up in verse 46. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. You can only imagine her consternation. And he said to them, Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? The Greek is a little tricky there. It could be translated, about my Father's business. This is an extraordinary statement. It's the first words quoted from Jesus. And what question is he answering? Is the boy like the man? Well, who is the man? He was the Son of God. He was doing the will of his Father. Who's the boy? He's doing the will of his Father. He's about his Father's business. He's involved in his Father's house. And those things characterize the boy as well as the man. Luke is a brilliant author to bring that in. But why does it matter to you and me? Because the following verses say, and they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and men. Jesus understood that he was God, at least at puberty, probably before. But even though he was God, and even though his parents, they didn't understand what he was about, he submitted to them. Why? Because they were God's authority in his life. Ultimately, the question of what Jesus understood about himself as a boy is irrelevant. Here's what's relevant. When he did understand he was God, he didn't use that to his own advantage, to rebel against people who were less than him. Rather, he submitted to the authorities because he was submitting to God through them. And that's a lesson we all need to take away.